Wake up, Charleston. Let's break bread and barriers. I'm your host, J.A. Moore.
It's time to call your friends and family to tune in to Breaking Bread and Barriers with the Honorable Chef J.A. Moore.
J.A. Moore here. I'm a father. I'm a brother. I'm a son. I'm a chef by trade. I'm the last graduating class of Johnson & Wales University. That means a brother can cook. Culinary degree. Love JWU. Those of you that went to JWU would know that. I'm the only professional chef in any state house in the country. Military veteran. I was in the Army National Guard. I was a tanker. I'm a South Carolina state representative. I'm a community connector. I'm a lover of all things Charleston and the greater Charleston area. You know, I'm a believer in all things that are good and righteous. I'm just happy today to also call myself a radio show host. And I'm looking forward to connecting with you all through this medium. I've lived in Charleston for 18 years now. And all over Charleston, I currently reside in Goose Creek, South Carolina. I've lived in Hanahan and North Charleston and West Ashley. And, you know, I've worked, I'm what they call a hospitalitarian. You know, for the first 17 years of my career, I primarily either ran restaurants, owned restaurants or catering companies or bars. That's what I've done. And over the past 2 years, we started a public engagement firm, and we're just out here just to get to know folk. And this show, Breaking Bread and Barriers, the focus is really going to be on what we have in common, the connectivity of all people. We want to bring in all of us to have this conversation. I want to get to know y'all, so please reach out either via social media or here at the station, 107.3 Magic. I'm looking forward to being a part of the Magic family. I'm excited, y'all. Let's break bread and barriers, more importantly. Let's get it. Hey, y'all. I'm J.A. Moore. I'm happy to be here. Welcome to Breaking Bread and Barriers. On this show, we're going to focus on what brings us together. The concept for this show started out for me about 6 years ago. I'm in a restaurant industry. I've been a hospitalitarian for over 16 years now in the greater Charleston area. And unfortunately for me in this community, 2015 was a transformative year for all of us. The Walter Scott tragedy happened. I was deep in the community during that time. And this, a few months later, tragically, my sister Myra Thompson, along with 8 other parishioners, were murdered in the Mother Emanuel tragedy. And during that time, you know, for me, I just firsthand saw the hatred and division that this country and this community were kind of facing all at once. But I knew from personal experience that if you could bring people together through food and beverage, if you could get people talking with one another, that we had more in common than we did not. But at some point, we just stopped talking to one another. We had stopped fellowshipping with one another. And it wasn't just people in our communities with each other. You know, how many times do we have family meals with each other now? How many times do we really sit down and talk and focus on each other? We haven't done it in a long time. And so hopefully through this show, as a community, we can get back to sitting down, breaking bread with each other and all of the barriers. This week, we're going to chop it up. We're going to focus on how we recover after the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic that wreaked havoc on not just South Carolina and the greater Tri-County area, but on this entire nation and this world. We're going to talk about how the recovery is going. It's reported that it's almost 50 to 60% of Americans still haven't been vaccinated, but about 40%, a little 40% here in South Carolina have been vaccinated. We got a ways to go, but we are reemerging. And so we want to talk about that. You know, this first part, I want to talk about like my personal story. I'm a chef by trade. I talked about that. That's the genesis of the show. And I know firsthand I have a catering company, and we're doing a lot of work in the airport, both in Charleston and Myrtle Beach Airport. Early and mid-March, we were devastated by the pandemic. We went from really big sales, record numbers at the airport, to 95% of our business were just gone right away. And I'll talk about like the mental stress and financial stress and the personal stress of that, man. It was tough. We did everything we could to still be supportive of the community. We fed during the pandemic over 1,500 100 people throughout the greater Charleston area, but really across the state. We talked nationally about how the pandemic was affecting the restaurant industry and the hospitality industry and the service industry, and how disproportionately it affected people of color and women. And so, as we're starting now to come out and we're all getting vaccinated, those of you that haven't been vaccinated, I'm encouraging you to do so and to be safe for not just yourself, but for our community. What I've been thinking, I've been having conversations over the past year and a half now about, like, how do we use this tragedy similarly to, for me personally, the tragedy of my sister's murder, use the tragedy of the COVID-19 crisis for positivity? How can we reconnect? How can we reinvent ourselves? And oftentimes what I've found when I've talked to people in all walks of life is this: 2020 was a year of reflection. It was a year of evaluation. It gave people the opportunity to really decide what was important for them. Some people had a good year financially. Some people didn't lose their jobs. Some people didn't, their business wasn't affected. Some people actually made a lot of money during the pandemic. But what the common thread of what the conversations I've had with people, what it was all about, y'all, is this idea of, like, reinventing yourself or recharging yourself or coming to a point of purpose, like finding these moments of clarity, taking stock of, like, what we do in our time, like how do we spend our time, who we spend our times with. Oftentimes we had to be selective on what our circle looked like. Isn't that powerful, y'all, thinking about our circles? I had to evaluate my circle, like who was good in my circle and who do I needed to, like, reevaluate my circle. And I think we all did that. I'll tell you the story. I remember one of the first times I kind of engaged publicly after, when we were in the midst of the crisis. We were delivering food in Berkeley County. And it was for a testing site, and there was a young lady and her elderly grandmother. They were in their cars waiting to get their test, and when we were, like I said, feeding the folks that were getting people tested. And I remember the young lady rolled down a window, and they were going to get the test, and I was kind of talking to them. I think I was like 10 feet away from them. And she recognized me, and she was just like, "Hey, when are we going to be over this? Like, I'm so fearful for my grandmother." Y'all got to remember, wasn't that long ago that we didn't have any kind of vaccination, and people were, people's, like, mental stress and anxiety of, like, what's going to happen to their loved ones were really high. And, in that moment, she's like, "I don't know what's going to happen to my grandmother. Like, what are y'all doing as leaders to make things better?" And the first thing that came to my head, the first thing that I thought about to her was this idea of faith without work, right? That yes, we can be faithful in the process. Yes, we can be faithful in our spirituality and our religion, but we got to put in the work. And I told her that in that moment that I was dedicated to doing everything I could to, like, keep her grandmother safe by as much as I could, giving the information to the people that needed it, which was all of us, and also supporting the essential workers during the crisis. And that's what I did. And I was so fortunate. We did a vaccination drive in North Charleston at Mount Moriah Baptist Church. And I was just so fortunate that same young lady and her grandmother came in. The grandmother was able to get vaccinated, and I was there to help kind of organize the vaccination drive. And it just felt so good that, number one, that her grandmother didn't contract or get COVID, and she had stayed safe and they were diligent. And also it felt good that I was able to keep that promise that I made to her and to the community to work diligently to be supportive. And there's so many great stories out there, y'all, of people being resilient during this crisis. And, what it made me kind of really focus my energy on as well is this idea of, like, good mental health. In so many communities, especially the African-American community, it's been such a stigma around mental health forever. I mean, my brother struggled with mental health his entire life. I remember growing up, my brother early on, guidance counselors and teachers brought it to the attention of my parents that my brother, although he was highly advanced when it came to academic, he had some social mental health kind of challenges. And when it was brought to my parents' attention, my dad's response was like, no son of mine has any kind of mental health challenges. And my brother never got the help he needed. He struggled with mental health the rest of his life. I tell that personal story to say that there's such a stigma in our community, in all communities, when it comes to good mental health awareness and wellness. And what this pandemic has really highlighted, I think, is the fact that, all of us are vulnerable and susceptible to mental stresses. And these mental stresses can legitimately trigger crises. And one of the things that I think have kind of merged out of this crisis is I think people have a renewed focus, not even focus, that's not the right word, but understanding or a clarity, I think, on the fact that having good mental health is just as important as exercising or eating right or spending time with your loved ones. Like that self-care of making sure that wellness check, that mental wellness check is vitally important to how we progress and move forward. So, like my call to action in this moment, y'all, as we, like, this is the inaugural show, and I want to say, like, this show is, this episode may be a little bit heavy, because we're talking about how do we transition out of, a once in a lifetime, once in a generation, once in 100 years crisis. It's heavy, but like this show is going to be bigger than just, just crisis moments. We're going to focus on triumphs. We're going to talk about, in the next segment, we're going to talk to some entrepreneurs and some folks that through COVID-19 have emerged stronger than before. And we're going to explore over the next several weeks stories, humorous stories. We got this segment that we're working on in the coming weeks called Bar Babble. And we're going to talk to bartenders, y'all, throughout the Tri-County area and hear some stories, So those of you that are out there that are having a good time when you're at a restaurant or something, we're gonna explore that a little bit, because we want the show to be lighthearted. We want to be able to break down some of these social and cultural and racial barriers, economic barriers, and have real conversations with people. And then hopefully this first show is kind of an introduction to my style and to a little bit of my personality. I'll be sharing my story with y'all as we go through this journey together. I'm looking forward to getting to know y'all and y'all getting to know me. But yeah, y'all, we'll be right back. Let's chop it up. I'm here with a dear friend. He's ambassador for Gullah Geechee culture, hip hop, fashion, sneakerhead, kids. I don't know. I'm missing something, KJ. What am I missing?
No, that's good, bro. I think that's a good stop.
Yeah, Black people.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm my dear brother, KJ Kearney. Introduce yourself to the people, man.
What's going on? My name is KJ. I'm a native of North Charleston, graduate of Morningside Middle and Stall High School, proud graduate of South Carolina State University, home of the Mighty Bulldogs and the Marching 101. And right now I run a platform called Black Food Fridays.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. We're talking about the pandemic. I shared with the people, my personal story. And KJ, to your credit, y'all were super supportive as we, the catering company, went through some challenges during the COVID-19 crisis. And we're still getting through it, y'all. But the inspirational story about Black Food Friday and the genesis of it, it's inspirational, man. It honestly, I watched close up as you developed this platform and elevated so many Black restaurateurs, not just here in Charleston, but nationally. You continue to give me hope. So talk a little bit about why was this important to elevate Black restaurateurs and Black chefs and pastry chefs during a pandemic? Why was that so important, brother?
Yeah, speaking of the pandemic, they say when America catches a cold, Black people catch pneumonia. And anytime there's an economic downturn or depression, America is affected, but then the least of us is affected even more. And so we don't have to go into the history of how America has treated Black people. We just know that it hasn't always worked out for us. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was just let people know that there are Black-owned businesses that still need help, still need support. And I love food. I consider myself a foodie. So this offered me an opportunity to do both things, to support my people and then those businesses that I'm already supporting, try to get people on board to do the same during such an important period of time where economics and life and health was all up in the balance.
And brother, I tell you, it was amazing to see the platform start out just a year ago, a little over a year ago, and how it's grown to such a national presence. You know, what was the secret sauce, if you will, to what was the recipe to your this early success that you're experiencing?
Yeah, I think there's some stuff that I did, and then there was some stuff that was outside of my control. Mm-hmm. So the stuff that I did was consistency. Building an online platform is not necessarily the hardest thing in the world, but it is a very tedious job, right? So I was posting 3, 4, 5 times every single day, just shouting out all these Black-owned businesses all across the nation, which again is a joy to do, but it's a lot of tedious work. And then second of all, we had what a lot of Black creatives call the June boom. So last summer, America became super mega woke. We had Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. All of this news hit at once while we were all at home because America had shut down. So we went from, I started in May. By the end of the month, we had like 1,000 followers. By the end of June, we had 4,200. Fortunately for me, the support for what I was doing did not stop. Even though America's appetite for Black social movements started waning over time, over that year, fortunate for me, my support kind of increased. Mm-hmm. So not only did people on the grassroots decide that they wanted to be a part of this, then I started having some businesses as well who were like, they saw the vision and they wanted to help me get the word out.
Right. So can you've traveled all over. And I love that you still know where home base is, and you've highlighted some incredible restaurants here in the greater Charleston area. Can you talk to me about and I'm gonna be careful because I know you've made friends everywhere. So, but can you tell me about? I'm not even want to talk about the food because I'm a chef and I understand the love that we all have for what we create. But can you talk to me more about the experiences? Like, can you tell me, like, so far, what's been the best experience that you've had doing this development of this platform?
Oh, man. I mean, a lot of good things have happened, J.A., but I'll say one of the most rewarding experiences is when I had a gentleman who lives in Mount Pleasant tell me that he had been living down the street from a Black-owned restaurant for 15 years. And before Black Food Fridays, he, A, didn't know it existed, and therefore, B, never supported that business. And now, every Friday, he is going out of his way, because there's not a whole lot of Black-owned businesses in Mount Pleasant, Black-owned restaurants, that is. And he's going out of his way every Friday that he can to go support a Black-owned restaurant. That is quintessential to what I'm trying to do, is to get people to think outside of themselves and participate actively in the economic empowerment of Black-owned businesses. So I can say without a doubt that was one of the most rewarding experiences of doing this so far.
It was like an amen moment.
Definitely. It didn't validate the work, because I think the work is valid, but what it did was kind of put a battery in my back that even if people don't reach out to me, people are paying attention, they're listening, they're learning, and so it kind of gave me, like I said, more juice to keep doing what I'm doing.
Right. And obviously we know that just from the sheer growth of this movement that you started, that is working, and you've had a lot of early success. Can you talk to the people that are new in whatever their endeavors? Maybe they just started a business. Maybe they got a different position at their current job. Maybe they're in transition still, trying to figure out what's next. That's been kind of the beauty of COVID. It's like we've all kind of, like that battery in the back moment, we've all kind of sort of had it at some point over the past year and a half. Can you give us, like, and I don't want you to, the question isn't about like something bad that's happened during your experience, but more of like a moment where you realize, okay, let me recalibrate. let me tweak this idea because you put so much in it. You know, and I think sometimes it is good to be focused on whatever ideas, but we have to be willing to make adjustments.
Correct.
Can you kind of talk about that adjustment moment that you've had?
Definitely. So like I said, this summer during the June boom, we had a lot of people reaching out wanting to help. Just, you know, a bunch of white people, or I will say non-black people, because it wasn't just white people, who wanted to help and wanted to be a part of this movement in some way. And what I realized is at that moment, there needed to be some form of education, right? And there's an author, Adrienne Marie Brown. She has this book called Pleasure Activism. And one of the things that she says, and I hate to reduce all of her work to like 2 sentences, but one of the things she says is in order for change to last, it needs to be a pleasurable experience. And so, yeah, shouting out restaurants is cool, but now that I have their attention, what else can I impress upon them? And that's when, at the end of June, is when I realized, okay, I got to do more than restaurants. I got to shout out the chef, the private chef, the caterer, the home baker, the recipe developer, the barista, you know, the coffee shop owner. I wanted to expand my footprint in terms of showing people in America what black people are doing in the culinary space. Because it's not all soul food. There are black people making sushi. There are black people making chocolate. You know, I just bought some tea from Target that a black woman has in Target, you know. And so that was the first thing. And then the second thing was I wanted to educate, or at least enlighten. You know, I think education is a personal decision. You got to decide you want to learn and do better. But I can present the information.
Right.
And so now what we do is we showcase a variety of people in the space, but also we're giving out information that people did not know.
Right.
Like, for instance, there are people who did not know why some black people don't want to be associated with fried chicken and watermelon.
Right.
Like, there's a history
That's
behind
right.
that.
I'm from Hampton. We're home on the watermelon festival.
Right.
I eat my watermelon.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I cook with it. Watermelon is my favorite food of all time.
Yeah. But a lot of people don't know why, and I'm talking about black people.
Yeah.
Why they are adverse to, you know, being associated with these foods.
Right.
And they shouldn't be. You know, white supremacy is why you don't like these things. It's vilified, coordinated attacks on our livelihood is why some of these things we don't want to be a part of. And so I use my platform to, okay, one day we're going to say this is a great fried chicken spot in North Charleston. And then the next day I'm going to teach you why black people are afraid to associate themselves with fried chicken. And,
right.
you know, the next day we're going to show you a bakery. And then the next day I'm going to teach you about, you know, Afro-Peruvians and how after they got their freedom, they created a dessert that is now an identity of that country. So it's a little bit of back and forth. It's, you know, get them with the food and then throw a little education on it. That's
right. I think that's so important that you give people the knowledge and give them access to the information, and what they do with it is on them. And at the end of the day, if it's just, as you mentioned, the brother that goes to a different black-owned restaurant every week, that's powerful. That's a game changer. KJ, I know part of like just the core who you are is you are a lover of all things hip hop. And so talk to me a little bit about like the relationship that food and music have with each other, because it's a beautiful relationship.
Yeah.
So can you kind of talk about specifically like hip hop and black food culture? Can you talk about that?
Oh yeah, 100%, bro. I mean, shoot, you could probably do a whole show just discussing the intertwinings of food and hip hop. I mean, some of your best songs are named after food or drinks, like, you know, Snoop Gin and Juice, you know, Drake and Jay-Z Pound Cake. I go on and on about, you know, all the ways that hip hop is influenced by food. But I guess the strongest connection is that most food in America is based on the foundation of Gullah Geechee cuisine. Most food in America. When you think of, first of all, there's two types of American food, right? When you think of American food, you think of things like hot dogs, apple pie. What people don't realize is that stuff wasn't American, right? Apples didn't originate in America. They originated in Asia, right? Apple pie, one of the first times you see that written in a book is in England. Right, so that was brought over, and then we adopted it and made it ours. But the stuff that originates from America comes from the enslaved. And some of the first enslaved are my people, you know,
Right.
the Gullah Geechee people.
Right.
So our cuisine set the foundation of what American cuisine is. So that's
Okay.
number one.
Got it.
That's what I feel like everybody should know. The same way with hip hop. Hip hop is a global phenomenon. I think a couple years ago was the first time where hip hop became the most streamed, purchased, listened to genre of music. And that's ours. We started that. Another similarity between the two is we don't seem to value our talent in a way that allows us to monetize off these things.
Right.
You went to school, you learned how to cook professionally.
Right.
And you know better than I do. There's a whole bunch of people, black people, right now in Hampton, in Manning, in North Charleston, who can cook they behind off.
That's right.
And they never think about, oh, I should monetize this. I should create wealth, economic empowerment for my family.
Right.
Same thing with hip hop. We're just fly. So we dress well and we're lyrically inclined and we're creative, and then someone else gets the money off of us, right? We sign buying contracts or we never get on because we don't know how to monetize our skill. So not only from a lyrical standpoint, but just from the development of black culture combined, you can see the similarities on how we value food and how we value our creativity.
Right. I mean, that's powerful, brother. I mean, you broke that thing down, and it's amazing when you talk about it. I was thinking when you were talking about Goody Mob and
Soul food.
then Soul Food.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's a classic.
But
What
50
else?
Cent said, I love you like a fat kid love
Love
cake.
cake.
I mean, there's so many
Right.
food references
That's right.
in hip hop.
That's right. Tell me as we wrap up, man, and I tell you, I could talk to you for another hour. You could have this. The whole show would be me talking to KJ. But talk to me a little bit about what's next.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk about like what's next?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I cannot not mention that I am monetizing this platform, right? And I want people to know this because I don't believe that you have to separate doing good and being able to make a living off that. And so I want to give a shout out to some businesses that have helped me in that, and people. Bakari Sellers was like the first person to believe in Black Food Fridays. He gave me some money, and we then took that money, me and John Mitchell, shout out to John Mitchell, and then gave it to you so that you could provide food for people. You know what I mean? We can't do good without having fun. So shout out to you, shout out to him, shout out to Red Clay Hot Sauce. I just did some work with Pepsi. You know, they're really starting to invest money into black restaurants. And then last but not least, I did some work with the Charleston Visitors Bureau, who is then, you know, they have heard the criticisms of people getting on them about them not being very diverse. And they're slowly but surely working in an intentional way to make sure that they diversify themselves. And I'm putting myself in those positions to take advantage of that and then, you know, bring blessings to other people. So TV show is what I'm really working on right now. I feel like black cuisine needs to be elevated. Not in a pretentious way, but it needs to be seen because a lot of people don't believe it until they see it on TV. And then from there, you know, I have other plans of trips and seminars and workshops that all center around us, you know, taking this thing that we take for granted, but we love, black food, and empowering ourselves to do more with that.
It's amazing, man, how this all started because we were going through a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic that through times of anxiety and anxiousness and so many of us, you found a way to elevate not only yourself, but more importantly, culture and people. And, man, I tell you what, I'm just grateful to call you a brother as a Kamya. And I tell you, we... Charleston is North Charleston in particular is lucky to call you a native son, man. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, what an incredible first meeting, first gathering with you all. I'm just so grateful to my dear friend KJ Kearney and Black Food Fridays. Please follow him on all social media platforms at Black Food Fridays with the S on all social media platforms. His Instagram is the one that he's really taken off on, so please follow the good brother. And I'm leaving y'all with this. I want you all sometime this week, take 5 minutes out of your busy days. Any time of the day, don't matter. I want you to close your eyes for 5 minutes. And I want you to really think about gratitude. This has been a tough year and a half now for all of us. We've all had challenges. I've tried to share a little bit of mine with you all. But take 5 minutes, close your eyes, be in your quiet place, and think about gratitude and what you're grateful for. I try to do it every day, but at least once a week. It's J.A. Moore with Black Food Fridays in service and gratitude.
Breaking Bread and Barriers with the Honorable Chef J.A. Moore. You can find him on Instagram and Facebook at J.A. Moore for SC15. And you can join us next week for Breaking Bread and Barriers with the Honorable Chef J.A. Moore.